tonight?
We have no one.
No one?
No.
Can I get the town clerk to read the items on the consent agenda?
Letter A, Board of Aldermen meeting minutes, June the 7th, 2021, the agenda session meeting. 2, June 15th, 2021, regular meeting.
Do we have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
Yes, sir. I'll make that one.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Presentation, Chief, we got a presentation.
Yes, I'll be very brief. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Seems like I'm here more and more for our highlighting our folks, which I'm very pleased to do. Obviously, you all are aware that we lost James Perry to Stallings PD. He went up there to take a lateral for an assistant chief's position. That left us with a vacancy, obviously, in a very important role. And after, counsel with the town manager and amongst ourselves, the obvious choice to replace him is Lyle Annable, which I think a lot of you already know. Lyle is our longest tenured officer at the Elon Police Department, which he probably would be with all the old timers still being here, all our salty dogs still being on payroll. But even now, with a young crowd, that's not really saying that much. But to put it in perspective, he's been here since 1995. And he had some experience coming from airport police, I think, out of Greensboro. I don't know. My memory is better than I thought. He was actually one of my mentors. He spent some time as my lieutenant when I was in CID and on patrol. Someone I really looked up to. He's occupied about every facet of our agency, and just as a wealth of knowledge, I feel very lucky to have him working with me. I'd be proud to work for him. So I think we're in good hands. He's going to be taking over patrol operations. So he will be a direct mentor and coach for all our young upcoming officers, getting them where they need to be. And in line with that, we'll be starting, a lieutenant's process in the next couple months to come. So congratulations.
Real brief, when I started here in 95, I was to work for 2, maybe 3 years in this small little town that I've known about and build my reputation. And because it was easier to transfer to a larger department laterally if you were already a police officer. So when Dan Engel gave me this opportunity, I thought, well, I'll give him 2 or 3 years and then go over to Greensboro or Guilford County, a bigger agency. And then I found something special here. I found that this community was a great place and was a great fit for me, and realized that if you water the grass where you're at, it's going to grow just fine. And through all my deployments and military service, I've always come back and found this place to be home. So I welcome this opportunity and look forward to finishing up my career. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Comments. Are there any citizens here tonight who would like to make any comments to this board about their wishes or concerns? Hearing none, we'll close the public comment section. But at this time, I think it'd be good for our town manager to go over our situation with the water situation in town.
Sure.
I think you sent us something.
Yeah.
A lot of words.
Yeah, a lot of words, a lot of pages. Hand you out this evening, and we're gonna go ahead and love to stack out for people who were showing up, and apparently I didn't keep a copy for myself, but we'll post this on our website tomorrow, so that the public has access to it. And it's several pages of Q&A. Questions that we fielded, questions we haven't fielded that we thought people might want to know about the water and sewer budget. Where does the money go? Why is the rate going up? Why are there more days in July's bill? How to, whatever we could think of to write a question about it and then provide that information. Real briefly, in case anybody has logged in or watches this later, we've had a long relationship with City of Burlington, going way back. We always purchased some of our water from them through the 80s, 90s, into the 2000s. Is our wells became a bit cantankerous, perhaps. Still met all the standards, but it was getting more and more obligation on us to maintain certain standards, expensive. We opted to make the switch and purchase all of our water from Burlington in about 2008. So what I think a lot of people don't recognize is that the rates that Elon has are made up of Burlington's customer rate. So every Elon customer pays the same rate as a Burlington customer. On top of that, they pay the cost that we incur to maintain our own system. So we pay a little bit to maintain all the distribution system in Burlington, and we pay everything to maintain our system here in Elon. We have some major investments that are coming in our water system. We are hoping that some of those we will find alternate means of financing so that the ratepayer won't have to foot the bill. But in this current year, we are undertaking a study called infiltration and inflow. Water lines are made up of segments, and over time the segments loosen a little bit, or sewer lines, excuse me. Sewage doesn't leak out, but water leaks in. So we are taking on water into our lines that we're then sending to Burlington to treat. So our costs go up when we treat, we add gallons of clean water. So we are undertaking a study of infiltration and inflow, finding out where we're having those issues. That's something going to be in this current fiscal year. In a subsequent fiscal year, a year or two down the road, probably, we will undertake remedial work to eliminate all that leakage into our system. As I said, we're hoping to have alternate funding to do that. We have a major water line replacement project that's coming up on East Haggard. Again, we are hoping for alternate means of financing to pay for that. And lastly, the project that is most imminent, and we'll be talking about momentarily, is the purchase of the Travis Creek Pump Station from the town of Gibsonville. And that presents us with opportunities, because with that came an agreement on the line of agreement of where the two communities are going to grow in the future. We've already seen development take place in anticipation of this. There's a cost involved with that we have to purchase, higher maintenance costs down the road, that kind of thing. So that bond will be issued this fall. Debt service will start next year. So those are some of the things that are playing into our rate increase for this year. And the rate study we had commissioned anticipates a rate increase again next year. Some of that will be dependent on how many new users sign in on the system. If it's more than what we estimated, our rate increase might be lower. If it's fewer than we anticipate, we might have to have an additional increase either next year or the following year. So we're at a point where we need to invest in the system. We've deferred a lot of investment over the years, and we're at a point where we need to start making those investments. Some, like this study on infiltration and the remedial work, will be to save money, even though it costs money to do that. I think those are some of the big ones. Oh, the other issue that people have been confused about is Back in 2019, we decided to undertake changing the way we track water usage. Historically, we've sent 2 or 3 people around town for the better part of a week reading everybody's water meter to find out how much water they used for the previous 2 months. Most communities have already switched to automatic readers. So they're digital and they just read it automatically and we call it up on the computer and send out the bill. We are finally at that point. We've installed the readers. We've put in 3 wooden poles with the readers on top. So almost all of Elon is covered by this network now, which
When
means
you say almost all of you are, what is almost?
I
I think there's about 100 that it is not picking up. for
Yeah.
you guys.
So how many customers do we have? Not counting all the ones at the university.
It's about 2,600 meters total. That does include theirs. And I want to say they have 50 to 60 meters.
We have about 100 at Hatton.
Right. that we then have to go out and read. So with that ability of knowing instantaneously what water usages are, making it easier to do it, the board made the commitment to switch to a monthly billing process. This last budget, when this budget was approved this past spring, that will begin October 1. So the last bi-monthly bill will be September 1st, and then you'll get a bill on October 1st for the transition began with our July bill. So July's bill typically covers April and May. We extended that to include part of June. So that September's bill will include a little bit of August. So October's bill will then cover from mid-August to mid-September. So we'll go on a roughly 30, 31 day cycle for each bill as opposed to the 60 to 62 day. So there was some confusion with people as to why there were additional, why is our bill high? Well, we added in 11 days. So we think we've explained that to people. That's a question in here. We tried to explain the process, the logic, why we did that. So when the July bills went out, we probably had estimated between 10 and 15 complaints come in or calls come in about what's going on, why is it high? We get some every time, every billing period, we get some. So something less than 15 were new complaints, unanticipated because of this. We think we've addressed it with most people, and we're looking forward to some smoother sailing. July's bill had a piece of the newsletter that went with it. There was also information on the bill. We've been doing weekly updates on Facebook and Instagram. September's newsletter will have more information about it, getting people ready for the October 1st switch over to monthly billing.
Questions from board members? Now, you said we've had between 10 and 15 complaints here at Town Hall,
Yeah.
and that's phone calls and in-person visits. Have board members had conversation? How many of you had conversation with?
4 or 5. The majority of those missed the fact that it did have more days on the bill. One in particular, I did have Rich pull some data on their usage and provided an explanation to them. And I guess that was resolved. I never heard anything else after I shared that explanation. And I did encourage them to reach out to Town Hall if, they had more questions about it. But like I said, last week, I do think that the usage reporting was very helpful in that particular case. So, I would just encourage anybody else who does hear feedback that first you start with, it did have more days. The next one's going to have more days. So you might hear it again. But if if it seems like excessive, then, you know, they should come and get that report because it is helpful. You know, it might just be that maybe they had, you know, 6 people staying in their house for a week and that's 6 more people taking showers, you know, or, you know, maybe maybe they planted grass and they were watering their lawn for, you know, an extended amount of time. And I don't think that people really realize how much water is used in watering a lawn, in a toilet running. It can add up really quick. So it's useful.
Thank you. Other board members have?
I had a couple of questions. One is, obviously, it's digital technology. So what's the lifespan of these meters? Because obviously, the question's gonna be, is it accurate or not? So what's the lifespan of a digital meter?
Does anybody know that offhand? I don't.
There's a maintenance schedule in place that would replace the meters periodically, and I want to say it's every 5 years, but it may be longer than that. We did replace and put new meters in prior to the transition. This has been an incremental effort over years, and it began with replacement of meters before we went to plug the antenna in and started the remote reading of the meters. We have every reason to believe that they're going to be as accurate or more accurate than what we've used in the past. And having the additional ability to pull up this data, which can be hourly if necessary, to show usage patterns is very beneficial when we're working with the customers with their questions or concerns, and helping them manage their usage if needed.
During this time, how many meters have we changed out? No, I meant with complaint period.
For the complaints, I'm aware of 2 meters that we've switched out. And we're gonna have them evaluated to see if the meters were in error.
Yeah. That's how many I'm aware of too.
I had one other question, Rich. You noted, which I think is great, try to detect leaks that coming from the, fresh water versus sewer, but you said that is $150,000 for a study?
Yep.
And so you always wonder, you don't know what you don't know. So would we be losing, because we don't know how much water is infiltrating to our system, do we?
We have an idea because we know how much water we purchase.
Right.
We have meters at those connections.
Right.
We know how much water is being treated. And the 2 numbers are not the same.
Well, they wouldn't be the same, but is it greater sewage than water, or is it just like at 98% what water comes in? Knowing that you're gonna have a loss of 10%.
I'm not sure if it's higher or lower, but what we do see is when we have wet periods, our sewage flows go up. Which indicates that when there's a lot of water in the soil, it's getting into our pipes and we're sending it to Burlington. We track our monthly flows going back for years, and we can see that. We can check weather data and say, yeah, that was a wet month, and our numbers went way up.
And about 3 years ago, remember Josh came and presented that information because we had a really wet year. And I mean, it was like astronomical how much he had estimated that we were paying because of just the rainwater.
We actually had to do a budget amendment that year for sewer because it was so much higher than what we had budgeted.
So this 150,000 is not budgeted for next year, but we'll have to amend
So It's budgeted
It's
for
in the current
this
budget.
year.
the current budget.
Yeah.
That was
How
during.
long will it take to do that study?
I'm not certain. We haven't gone.
It'll take a while
Yeah.
because it's really weather dependent. What they do is blow smoke into the lines. So the ground has to be dry. If the ground's saturated, the smoke won't come out of the cracks and you'll be able to see it. So it's gonna really be weather dependent, but it'll take probably the whole fiscal year. They'll do sections at a time.
just out of memory, being on board for a while, that we were way behind the curve with these water meters to put it mildly. So, I know when we had the discussions before, and I don't remember everything, but basically we feel like this is going to be a whole lot more accurate than what we had previously from that standpoint. I don't know that anything's going to be 100%. I remember correctly, we kind of like, okay, this needs to be done from a manpower standpoint and also just an accuracy standpoint. So.
Some of the meters that were in place when we started replacing were 20 to 25 years old. And the more age that is on a meter, the more it slows down. So the older they are, the less accurate they are. So replacing them is gonna, you're gonna get more accurate readings. People's bills are gonna go up, but it's more accurate than that older one that had been there.
Just a couple of things. First off, I never thought you'd be blowing smoke in lines to check. That's not the way I, if I had to if you give me 10 guesses, I don't think that would be.
It's like walking along the electric line with a light bulb.
That's
Right, right?
It's like, yeah, that's a surprise. And I can see why it would take so long to do that study, if that's where you're going to do it. A couple of things. I know our office staff have thought about this, but every bill's got usage in days. And if you average those out, if all things being equal, you can tell if your usage has gone dramatically or not. If it's an average of the same number of gallons per day, then it's just the factor of the number of days that's increased. That's all there is to it. And we had Missy's points exactly right. Our meters are expect to have a lifetime of 30 years. And as they get older, and meters can take a lot of different forms, most of them have a mechanical component to them. I can't think of a way that you could measure water without a mechanical, something tripping a mechanical component. The reader may be digital, but there's a mechanical component in there. And as those get older, they slow down because they begin to wear out and then they get gunked up and they just tend to slow down. Our experience is they've slowed down, not sped up. So, and of all the ones that we tested, we found less than 1%. Or they're within I think we have a tolerance of 5% on our side, 5% high or 5% low. And we call that a good enough meter. So less than 1% are outside of that range.
One thing we talked about at a previous meeting is about providing more information about historical usage. Is that something that we're going to look at? Like when our statement comes out, if you could show the last 6 months or 12 months of your bill, what you did each month, so that somebody had a question about why did my bill go so high? I think it's going to help people remember, because they're not going to remember that bill that had just one number on it unless they go back and pull it. Is that something we thought about, or is that something that's typically done from municipalities?
You can have anything you want to pay for.
Probably, yeah.
Typically, I hate to keep making the comparisons, but we provide a 12-month chart.
Right.
And you just have a line chart and it shows up and down and up and down. And it kind of gives you an idea of what you were using each month. And so you can have that sort of data on a per customer basis.
Well, I mean, I find it fascinating when I look at my Duke Power or Duke Energy bill, and it shows where you stack as far as your neighbors or the average household.
Don't you love them?
Yeah, and it makes me feel good. Like,
Yeah, thank you for making me feel guilty about that. But yeah, I think you can have all that data and have it processed and have it for each individual bill, but it takes an investment.
I had a few neighbors as well. It's probably about 5 or 6, like Emily talked, kind of caught me off the mailbox, which is always awesome. But they got their July bill, and so it had 71 days on it. And one neighbor was like, my bill was $300 and some. Like, what is it? And it was just, I think it's unfortunate that it was the extra days on that, right, with the rate increase, because it was not.
That one
Rate
didn't have
increase
the
hasn't
rate
gone up.
increase.
It wasn't
Like the
going up.
rates going up, this is insanity. But have we looked in what it would look like on our end, having a consolidation or regional water committee or group with Burlington, for instance, like Raleigh. So Raleigh took it and they have their 6 surrounding areas with like Zebulon and Gardner and stuff, and work together to get that to help be financially more stable for the consumer, but also, it allows for bigger bonds to come in if you're having to fix stuff or get the Travis Creek Pump Station, would we be prepared on our end to present, like, this is what we're willing to do if other municipalities, let's just say Gibsonville and Elon, decided to go to Burlington? I know it would take a bunch more than just that, but would we be prepared on our end? Is that something that we feel like would be beneficial for us? Sorry.
There are certain costs involved in running a water system. And so the more users you have, you have a certain amount of fixed costs. Each one pays less for those fixed costs. So in that scenario, I can see a situation where Elon rates might go down if we were an equal member of a regional water district with Brunswick customers, or Burlington customers, excuse me. Have no idea what that would look like in terms of, actual rate numbers. I mean, that's something that we could look into.
And they, I read up on some of it today, and they put together, since it is an enterprise and ran on itself, the water and sewer, their committee that runs it is made up of people from each one of the municipalities. And I just don't, if that's something we can look at from our end to see.
You're talking about Raleigh.
In Raleigh, yes. If it would be beneficial for us, if we could see some type of benefit. So if we did see a benefit, we could be prepared to try to go talk to other municipalities to see, because I mean, we see how it affects us with just the water boiling that just happened, where we're sharing all this water. So it's silly that we're paying a customer rate on top of other rates to control it. Like, let's just all work together and make some type of regional water source happen. But that's just my comments. I would like to look more into it, and I'll also look more into it in my end.
Thank you for that update. Let's go to item 5, ordinance and resolutions. Mr. Roder.
Sure, as I just mentioned, we are in the process of going through the local government commission for authorization to borrow money to purchase the pump station from Gibsonville that we've been talking about for a couple of years now. It's scheduled to close early December, and with your approval today of this resolution, you will be before the local government commission actually the same day as our next regular meeting. I think it's the 13th or 14th of September. They'll be meeting that morning to review our application. We'll be meeting that night to take any kind of final votes we need to authorize that bond process to go through. As I said, we will then be able to close. We will close with our bond later in September, and then we'd be able to close with Gibsonville early in December and take over ownership and maintenance of that facility.
We have a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make that
Do
motion.
we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Old business, discussion of equality resolution.
Sure, I will leave most of the discussion to be led by Emily and Davis, since they're the two board members who are working on this. But I did want to bring you up to date. So when Novus, we posted the agenda on Novus last week for everybody, we had the existing draft of the resolution in your packet. The three of us met yesterday morning. There were some recommended changes to it that I drafted. Got confirmation back from Emily and Davis by this morning, and have since added that new revised resolution into Novus and emailed you all copies of both the red line version, so you can see how the language was changing, and you have a clean copy on your desk this evening for your discussion.
Comments from board members?
Do you want to share?
Go ahead.
So when we met yesterday, we took recommendations that were provided by the board in past meetings and revisions and made those. So you can see some of those final red lines in the red line document as well. And then we really took into account the fact that, you know, we didn't want to just create a resolution and then be done. We felt like that there needed to be action after the resolution. And we would like for, you know, and the resolution does include this, be that we create a local committee, so residents of the town of Elon, other locals, to evaluate our municipal policies and ordinances to see if there are discriminatory impacts, create a forum for public input, and then for that group to then make recommendations to the Board of Aldermen about what our further actions should be, if any, so that it's not just, like I said, it's not just us making a statement and, you know, trying to think of what the word that was used for other municipalities that did a resolution, but we wanna walk the talk. We don't wanna just put it on paper and be done with it. We really felt like we should, you know, take some action to see what next steps should be, if any, for the town.
Davis, can you add anything?
Just, I think what Emily has said is, sets a good background for it. The recommendation for a committee, and the committee can take any form that you want it to take. It can be an internal look by the department heads, in addition to a couple of external members. It doesn't have to be a 6-month exhaustive line by line, because we know that all of our ordinance have to meet state and federal guidelines. But we just want to take a look at it, because up in the resolution, it's we the town. On all the rest of the visitors and the folks in the town, not to have these discrimination processes. It could be accidental, it could be something that's not intended, something that just happened over time, but we know the ordinances are founded in law. But we just want to take a look and see if there's a practice or something there internally, so we can say to the folks, yes, we're calling on you to do it, but we've also taken our own internal look. So that was really the intent behind that.
Is there any type of template to how many board member or how many on this committee, or just kind of?
It can be whatever you want it to do. And like I said, it could be as simple as department heads. We're going to call on you first to take a look at internally and see what you got. Just do a quick review, see if there's anything in there that stands out. And what we're looking at here are the ordinances. There's the difference between ordinances and practices. We know sometimes an ordinance, when you put it into practice, may not come out exactly the way that you wanted it to. So we understand that there may be those, but here we're looking at the ordinances and the practices that come after it. So just see if there's good follow through consistency. If I said that right.
As an example, a couple months ago, we were talking about this and brought to my attention that our stated policy wasn't reflected on our applications or on the website where we had our applications. So we went in and we've changed our website language to clearly state what our policy is. You know, so there's an issue, there's an area where, you know, there was a discrepancy. We are undertaking this ADA analysis right now, and we're starting to make changes for ADA purposes. That can include, you know, changing language or changing the references on our website. So when someone rolls over it, you get a caption, so you can see, read what it said, what it means, what the picture means, and colors. You know, all those kind of things you have to take a look at and to be in compliance. That's all part of that unintended consequence, perhaps, of discrimination. We don't have any ordinances or policies that are overtly discriminatory. We may have policies or ordinances that create a discriminatory situation, just and how it's put together, what it does. Those are some things that we would take a look at, or have someone take a look at with us.
And again, it goes back to a little bit about what we talked about last week. Discrimination is inherent in everything. And that there's two forms of discrimination. There's good discrimination and there's bad discrimination. And an example of good discrimination is when you're interviewing somebody for a job. You're going to discriminate that person's abilities and to do the job versus the other person that you're looking at that may not be quite as good. So discrimination, while most people take it in a negative context, it can be more than just that. So we don't want to lose sight of that as well. But we've had good discussion on this. We've had good input on it, and we've got input from all the board members. We hope we reflect what your advice was and what you wanted to see in the resolution. And if there's any other additions tonight, I hope that your
Other comments from board members?
Just a comment, I appreciate Davis and Emily and Rich putting this together. I know there's a lot of time and effort spent doing that and getting feedback and making sure this is a very sensitive subject and making sure that we're trying to cover as many bases as we can. I do appreciate you guys taking the time to do that, and you've done a good job, I think, in putting this together.
Yeah, I like to piggyback on what Mark said. I appreciate the work and effort put into this. I think we all heard loud and clear back in May when we heard a lot of folks speak up about their concerns. And what I like about this is this is more of a positive about a search for equality as opposed to searching for discrimination. And I think we've been fortunate. I think Lyle, you can attest. You can probably say that you've seen areas of discrimination since 1995, but they're probably far and few between. So we've been fortunate. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I think we're all smart enough to realize that. But what my concern is that I want to make sure that we don't go looking for a problem and try to create one to back up some things that people stated, because there are a lot of things were shared, but they really didn't apply to what I would say is discrimination from an ordinance standpoint. You know, someone yelling at someone, none of us agree with that, but that's the freedom of speech that people have. And so I think we have to be careful, mindful about the road we go. We got to be cautious, but we have to be deliberate. I think you're exactly right. You know, what is our next step? And I think we'll do that. I think staff can certainly entertain concerns from the community. And I think that's where we kind of have a barometer. You know, where are the problems? Where do they exist? Is it isolated to one area, one part of the town? Or are we as a town being discriminatory? Meaning we're not giving equal service and support to our citizens equal. And if we're not, we need to know about that.
And that's the reason the last portion, it says it's encouraged. So it gives us the freedom, it gives us the opportunity to look at it, make sure this is something you want to do, the way that you want to do it, how you want to go about it, how do you want to structure it. So it gives you that latitude.
Sorry, I should have brought this up earlier, but in the last paragraph, letter C, can we remove Elon in front of Board of Aldermen, since there's only one Board of Aldermen in the town? Just a formality.
I'll also notice, pointed out to me that in the two big paragraphs under the whereases, we have marital or familial status in twice in both of those. So just edit those out.
What copy and paste will do for you.
That's right, yes.
Okay, so you'll remove those and the Elon in letter C, and we would be voting on that revised version if we do.
That was a test to see if y'all read it.
No, I had read it. I pointed it out, but it didn't.
Well, it did say pregnancy in there twice, and I
Marital- yeah,
removed it,
Marital familiar status.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I missed that.
There's just too many identities. I guess we just said all people. We would have covered everybody. wouldn't we?
The committee, how would that be formed or hit? Is that up to us as the board to get that moving?
Yeah.
And so does that happen with us putting it on like next agenda to talk about what a committee would look like and how we can start a committee? Because if we got to do community members, we need to get the applications out. figure out how that goes. Because my fear with committees is that we've talked about doing a committee and then it just never comes to fruition. And I don't want that to be the case. I think having a committee is a great step for this. And I also want to echo Mark and Monty Davis. I really, really, really appreciate the time you spent to talk to everyone and go look for and go talk to other committees and people. I really do appreciate that. And Emily, I really do appreciate you working with Davis and Rich to figure something out to put out. I think this resolution is a good first step. It's, you know, I mentioned before, a step forward is a step forward. You know, we're not standing in place. I do hope we can look into what an ordinance would look like, how the steps would be, what it would look like, instead of just not seeing one and being against it. I would like to just see, and we can work that. We don't know what one would look like for our town. But this is a great step. I do like the word condone instead of tolerate being put in there. If we would have said tolerated, we would be tolerating it because it's just a resolution. But I do appreciate this coming up, and I look forward to moving forward with it. You know, Charlotte, you gave us the thing, just became the 10th municipality to do this. So moving forward, I'm glad all the board members are still on board of not closing the book on this, and then seeing where this leads us after this resolution.
I guess to answer your question, if you vote to approve this resolution, you know, the next step is yours. What do we do next? You know, if you decide you want to move in the direction of creating this committee, as David said, there's different ways you could do it. And if you said, you know, let's have a committee of 5 or a committee of 7, those are kind of your decisions. Are they staff members? Are the members of the community? Is it a combination? Are any of you on this committee? Charge as to what you want them to look at, give them a time frame that you want them to use, so that it's not a group that just kind of meets into oblivion. It's a group that has a deadline and comes back to you with something concrete that the board can then take action on at some point when that report comes back.
One thing I did want to add to this. So the beginning of this talk and stuff with the ordinance and having an ordinance for this, it was mainly spearheaded by the LGBTQ plus community, because there is no state and federal protection. So what we do have within the state and the federal level, is there a way to add, if you feel like you have been discriminated against, you can come, because we've asked about having data, right? And we don't have data to show this. You can come to the town and we can then provide you with how to get in contact with the state, or how to get in contact with, so you can take the next steps. And then we also would be able to say, hey, somebody said they felt this way. Instead of not, you know, if somebody walks into, you know, the Oak House and are discriminated against, what are their next steps? So if we're putting this out there to the public saying, hey, Elon's, we're against this, but we're willing to help send you in the directions that you need to go currently until we come up with something locally.
And I don't know that that has to be in the resolution. I almost wonder if maybe that's one of the charges of this committee, is to determine how we proceed with that. Like, do we have something on the website? Do we, you know, is the committee going to eventually become someone who reviews those types of things? Or I think we should put that as one of the charges of the committee, so that I don't really know what I'm trying to say other than that.
One of the comments in the resolution is to create a public forum, you know, for this committee to create a public forum to solicit that kind of information. What are the issues that are perceived to be in the community? You know, what are some of those facts? And one of the recommendations could certainly wouldn't stop us from implementing it sooner, just to putting a link on our website to say, if if this is a situation, here's who you need to get in touch with. So that that information is distributed a little bit more closer to home, perhaps, than trying to wade through a state website. We could certainly provide that.
Makes sense to me, because, if the concern is that these things are happening, then that does give us, giving the folks a resource to go, okay, we're not policing this. However, this is a serious situation. Here's a resource for you to go to and provide that. I think that's actually a very good idea.
The steps we could, if we pass the resolution tonight, we could post it on our website. We could ask people to comment on the committee and how to form it, or what would they like to see. And to Rich's point, add the links to state resources. In the meantime, if you have a concern and you'd like to, here's some links that will help you with that. So it gives us a little bit of, give the public a chance to take a look at it, and give us a chance to kind of pass it and get the feel of it, and let them get some comments on it and see where we need to go from there. That's just some possibility.
And for me, I would like to see community involvement in the committee. I don't know what anyone else thinks. I don't think it has to be like a committee of 12. I think maybe, we have a smaller committee of, a few volunteers from, town, but then also a couple or just a single staff person kind of guiding them or moderating that group and determining kind of what the next steps are. I'm sure, not going to volunteer you, Quinn, but I'm sure Quinn would be happy to, work with a staff person, or I'm happy to work with a staff person to come up with a plan for us to review for next month, so that we do have a plan in place and this doesn't just fall through the cracks.
I know this isn't the same, but I know we always ask, what are other municipalities around us doing? So one municipality around us that is doing, and it's not the exact same, but Mebane has the Racial Equity Committee. I know there's 6 people on this committee. They had over 40 applicants for this committee. So that is a municipality or a town manager to reach out to, see how they went about this. How did they vet the 40 applicants? What was their standard for looking at things? Because that's one thing I think Davis brought up when talking about a committee in previous, we need to make sure we have as many people. How do we determine who's on it and who's not on it? And so Mebane is doing something, but their committee is called Racial Equity. I don't know what we would call this committee, but that's a step to look forward to that. And yes, I do appreciate putting in the specific groups. I think that is something that is keen to it. I think everybody's covered with it. And now we just need to make sure we walk it. It's still, in my personal opinion, unfortunate. I can tell you I'm not serving you because you're gay in the town and nothing happens. But this is a step forward with the resolution.
As a quick comment, I think the value of having a staff member as part of the committee helps the committee keep from ranging too far over something can be answered fairly quickly. A staff member can say, well, let me tell you how that works, and here's how that came about. It also keeps something from an festering, and folks maybe kind of thinking, oh God, let's, waiting a week to kind of figure out and get the right people and get the answers. So I think the value of a staff person is good direction, valuable input and experience that will kind of help guide the committee.
What's the pleasure of the board? Do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make the motion to approve with the edits as discussed.
Do we have a second?
Second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And I'd like to thank Ms. Sharp and Ms. Montgomery for the good work y'all did, and also the input from the town staff. So they're sort of the cement that pulls us all together, and that's really stay on track. Let's see, anything else we have to do? report. Town manager report.
Just a couple of things. Get to that time of year where events are starting to pile up on us. Next Friday, August 20th, is the start of student move-in at the university. So just to make an announcement for everybody to be alert for changes in traffic volumes and traffic patterns during that weekend. And as we get information, we'll put it out on our sites as well. And I know the school will be doing that as also. August 19th and 20th, so next Thursday and Friday. I mentioned earlier, we're implementing some of our ADA improvements. One of those is doing some work on our front counter to bring that into ADA, make it ADA compliant. I will say that due to contractor availability and weather and supplies, this isn't necessarily happening when we wanted it to happen. But they will be doing demolition work to that front counter next Thursday and Friday, 19th and 20th. So while town hall will be open, we will not be entertaining customers at the counter those 2 days. Following Monday, things should be in a sufficient shape that we can start doing, processing people at the counter again. And I would direct people to our drop-off facilities and our online payment options. And obviously, we'll still be in the building and we can answer calls and drop things that way. Before our next meeting, Labor Day weekend will be the 2020 graduation ceremony at Elon University. They are estimating a couple thousand people will be in town for that event. So again, alert to traffic volumes, new traffic patterns, because I think there will be some road realignments and designations and closures and redirections. As those details are finalized, we'll be getting those out to the public as well. So that's it.
Mr. Green?
A couple things. Congratulations, Lyle, on your well-deserved promotion. Appreciate your longevity here and great work, and really happy for you. Well-deserved. Also, welcome back, Diane. Good to see you after a long absence, and I hope you're doing better. I know you're doing better than you were, but we've been thinking about you, praying for you. So I'm glad you're back with us. So, that's all.
Mr. Ray?
I want to echo congratulations, Lyle. Your words were very touching. I hope other employees and staff feel that way. And hearing that you feel that way, just planning on 2 years, but you're here for the duration that you've been here. It says volumes about our town, the staff. I know you've seen many different board of aldermen, you've seen different chiefs of police, different town managers, but somehow, it stays congruent and keeps you here. So that is, it's very kind of you to say that, and we appreciate you staying here. And with the university coming back, is there a way that we can, because we talk about this town-gown relationship, and I think it's grew greatly in this past year, especially through COVID. That's one of the good things that came out of it. And I know they are starting to at least let the merchants know when they're these big weekends. But one of the ways I feel like the community doesn't know what the university is necessarily up to, or some of their events that are for the university, that we can somehow put some stuff in our newsletter saying, hey, there's a football game this weekend, or there's free D1 soccer for you to go watch. There's a free orchestra. There's a free seminar, just so it can let the community know that the university is not necessarily running our town like they think, or the town is spending all this money for the university, but the university is giving back to the community. It's just, and it's not necessarily on our end to do that, but in the talks, to see if the university can help spread their voice to the year-round resident mailboxes of sorts.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And we actually had a meeting with them yesterday, and that was one of the points that was made, is that they were talking about a notice about move-in and students and to the neighborhoods where students live. And we were talking about, it'd be nice to expand that to everybody.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out how best to do that. Certainly our newsletters right now are every other month, so when we're sending out the September newsletter, that's actually gonna be covering November, as far away as November. Space limitations and things like that, and not necessarily knowing everything that's happening yet, because sometimes things happen pretty quickly over there. But we try and get those, we try and put them out when we know about them. And that's part of what this communication process that we've started with them, that's part of what it's about, is learning more about their activities so that we can make sure that we're putting out information and working with them so they're putting out more or wider spread information rather than just to their groups. So yeah, we will work with them to figure that out. Might just be put,
Sure.
referencing our calendar, so that getting particularly the stuff that's more community oriented, getting that on our calendar perhaps. We'll see.
And forgive me if I have or just missed this. On our newsletter, do we have a QR code? It would be real cool in that newsletter if there was a QR code that when you scanned it, it took you straight to our social media. So then those people wouldn't have to type in Town of Elon, Facebook or whatever. So as soon as they scanned it, it pops up on their phone and all they have to do is like it. So that's might be one way of grabbing more residents on our social media feed. Because, people are scrolling through their phones all the time. I mean, if I just can click on something and now I'm following the page, opposed to having to actively search for it, because we know people don't actively search for it. And I mean, people are in this meeting. And I mean, I've seen so many, I've personally seen, all the advanced notice for this meeting. So if they can just click and go, I think that might be a good way to maybe get 100 people.
Maybe we'll save the QR code.
Yeah, that's right.
We can look at that, yeah.
That's it for me.
Sharp.
I read in the monthly memo that the Sunoco location was purchased by SPC Materials. So that's an exciting win, I think, for us. So welcome to them. Also welcome to, we have a few new staff members over the last month, and of course to Assistant Chief Lyle. In my house, we have Chief Kelly, and now we'll have Assistant Chief Lyle, who my 6-year-old think make all the rules. So, because she doesn't listen to my rules, but she will listen to Chief Kelly's rules. So now you're on the list too. Looking forward to music returning this Friday to downtown. Certainly have missed that. And of course, Diane, it was great to see your face yesterday. That was a surprise. And I think that's it from me.
Allison.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo what Sergeant said. I appreciate the work the committee did on the resolution. Congratulations, Assistant Chief. Thank you for your service to town, but also as a reserve, since you retired. So appreciate that, your service to our country. One other thing I'd like to ask, Mayor, have we set a date to honor the naming rights to the park playground?
We're working on it.
I've been in touch with Ron, and I talked last week. He was waiting for a daughter to come back from vacation this week to find out when her availability might be. I expect to be talking to him the next day or two.
Do we think sometime in the fall? I don't know.
Uh,
I'd like to take the plastic bag off the sign sometime so people would know that's playground.
It's in the works.
The other thing is, we talked about some things I thought were great. I noticed the other day when I was walking around town, and maybe if somebody works for Duke Energy, they can answer this question. I don't know. But I noticed that we have some street lights that are LED and some that are not. Is that something that Duke Energy is responsible for upgrading? Because obviously, I would think there's some tremendous savings there. Does it mean a savings to us as the town?
So a couple of things. There's typically about 3 varieties of lights that you got throughout town. It depends on how old the town is when the light was put in. But the oldest ones she had were something called Mercury Vapor. And they were called that because they actually had a small amount of mercury inside them. Those have been prohibited by the federal government, so they'll no longer be produced. You can't you can't even fix them if you have one. So every time one of the Mercury Vapor lights goes out, it will be replaced with an LED at the next closest cost, which is incrementally higher than the Mercury Vapor, because the Mercury Vapor has been out there for so long. So it's an old light, and the LED is a new light. The LED lights are commercial grade. They're not, when you go to Lowe's, and you see a price on that LED, that's not the same LED. So it's a commercial grade LED. The other lights you have are high pressure sodium. Those are the ones that have kind of a orange cast to them. Those, again, will have a 30-year life, as will the metal halide. So they will be out there for a while. The only project Duke Energy has is we will replace every single metal Mercury Vapor light with an LED. So we're in the process of doing that. So what that's going to create, Chief and Assistant Chief, you may have some parts of town where you come through and you see a very bright white LED light. And then your very next light is high pressure sodium and it has kind of an orange cast to it. So if the town decides to at that point in time, and it's not something I'd recommend, but if you wanted to, you can have every light in town replaced with an LED. Now, you have the depreciation for the lights that's out there. If there's a metal halide light that's been out there for 5 years, it's got a 30-year life span. You have to pay the depreciation on that, taking that light out. So there's a transition cost to it. But eventually, every light will be an LED. We've had problems with some of the LED lights. You'll see some that burn a blue color. That's because of a chip that's malfunctioned in that light.
Notice that.
And if it's blue, report it. Encourage people, if they see one that's blue, report it.
Portland,
Sorry.
Sunset, one on Cortland, one on Sunset.
And it's an online service that you can go to, and you can actually see the light's location and report that light as being a blue light. So any customer.
Responsibility to report those to Duke Energy? Is it the town's responsibility to report?
Anybody can report. It's not the town's responsibility. Anybody
I
can.
know, because obviously you don't work after hours. So if, unless the police department reports a light out in a.
Well, Typically, that's the way we would learn about lights being out.
We do light surveys. The night shift would do a light survey.
And so we'd actually ask police force personnel to call in lights that they saw that were out, and then we put them up to be.
Well, that's helpful. Thanks, because I was curious that I noticed a variety. I'm thinking, would it be a savings to the?
Right now, it would not be. There's I think between the old Mercury Vapor is actually a cost increase. If you replace one of the high pressure sodiums and it's been out there for 30 years, it'd be a slight decrease. Not huge one way or the other. The one thing I think you want to avoid, excuse me, I'm not telling you what to do. My advice would be, as an impartial citizen, to pay the transition costs to change them all out at one time, it's going to be a shock. So I wouldn't advise it right now. If you have problems, if you have a major thoroughfare and you have that bright LED, and then you have the high pressure sodium, and then you have the metal halide, you might want to look at that main thoroughfare and say, well, let's change out these 5 and get them all the same. But elsewhere, it's pretty good. I'll notice the difference.
There's a line of purple ones that are like where the elementary school used to be. Those lines, they almost look purple.
They were kind of a purple color. Yeah. So they could be, the one complaint we get, the one observation we get, it's not a complaint, it's an observation, is that when we change them out to LED, people complain about it being too bright. And they want us to change it to something lower.
Purple, not the same. The purple was intended.
The purple, if it's a slight purple cast, it's a particular, that's the metal halide light. In most cases. It's blue. I mean, if it's LED that's failed, it's blue. There's no doubt about it. And we've actually had people who said, don't change it. I like the blue light.
We'll spend a lot of time looking at lights, is all I have to say.
Well,
I've never noticed.
Well, if you go to bed at 7 o'clock, you don't really see that stuff. Do you?
Oh. That's my bedtime.
I think that the conversation about the water rates is timely with the interest we have from some of our community, and that it may be a good time just to investigate the rates and how we charge and the various mechanisms we have available. The idea of a regional water authority is used in a lot of places, and it makes for neutral territory on any sort of issues when it comes to things such as economic development and other things. It's a board that's sitting there making that decision. You know, I don't know how many miles of water line Burlington has, but we're paying to help upkeep every single mile. And really, the only line we use is the one that feeds our town. So the lines that run to every single citizen in town with the current rate structure, and I'm making an assumption here, I haven't done a lot of study of it, but with the current rate structure, we're helping to maintain every single line, every mile of line in Burlington. And that may seem a little lot to some people. Not to Burlington. Yeah, so absolutely can't go without congratulations to Diane and Lyle for coming back. That Quinn said it very, very well. The statement of 40 years, well, not 40 years, the statement that the chief made about you're the oldest, longest, been here since dirt. I might would have phrased it just a little bit differently, but still, the good meaning there is that you're a long time faithful employee of the town of Elon. We appreciate that very much. And of course, my thanks to Emily and Rich for help on the resolution and all the work and input from everybody else. So,
Officer Hannibal, congratulations. I always tell my long service for the town, what most of you don't know is I was a police officer here in town.
oh, good God.
Actually served as a police officer in town of Elon College under Henry Hilliard. I think he was our first chief. But they had some riots in the Alamance County. And I was actually stationed at the police station with a gun that I'd never fired. And what I don't know, somebody pointed out, I don't think I was ever taken off the force, and am I due any back pay? From 1969.
No, but you haven't showed up for your shift for 50 years.
Oh, no show.
Just got to do all the back training first.
Yeah, there you go.
Diane, it's good to have you back. Any other business before the board? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, sir. I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.
I want to go home, no.
Yeah, you just took your time.
They got this fence.
See you guys. Everybody's in.
Is that okay?
Well, vacation for the school starts.
I thought that was.
Right, it's scary.
See you, brother.
Well,
Thinking about you. Got an invitation.
That was gonna be.
Something changes, doesn't it?
That one,
Just out of the blue. I didn't know.
I can open it.
We